So welcome everyone. This is an extremely important class. It's about happiness, the Jewish philosophy and how a person can live a happy life. It is something that I guess since the time of creation, man has been looking for happiness. And for the most part, not everyone has found it. So let's start with a question. We'll start with Layla. If you can read here from this list of emotions or feelings, which ones do you think are in a person's control and which ones are out of a person's control? You could either do, it's meant for if you have a class together, we could do thumbs up or clap, but we'll just ask one of you, Layla, if you can tell us, read through them and without too much in depth, just on a general observation, what would you say? And then we'll go through it during the class and we'll come back to this at the end.
Okay. Anger, sadness, braveness, happiness, calmness, preparedness, compassion, envy, brokenheartedness. I feel like they're all choices.
Okay. Oh, that's very good. Good point. And which is what we're trying to get to in this class. The question is, how is it that someone can be happy? Or even, is happiness an option? Is happiness something that we can have or not have in a choice? Or is it just a way that people were created? We'll read the overview. Stein, if you'd like to read the overview of class 9 and the student book, you can follow it. It's on page 180 for those that have it.
It seems that everyone is searching for happiness these days. Who doesn't want more happiness in their lives? A Jew is supposed to always be joyous, but what happens when we don't see any reason to be happy? Can we just switch on happiness at will?
So that is the question of the class. Can we and how do we just all of a sudden become happy? What happens if I'm not? Sheila, if you'd like to read here the introduction, these 4 lines. Or one second, let me see if Sheila can unmute. Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you.
Okay. We live in a wonderful time. The average person owns more clothing than kings possessed centuries ago, but the happiness index has fallen so low. Studies have found that 1 in 3 Americans are unhappy. That's a lot of unhappiness.
Yes. So what's the Jewish perspective? Let's start with reading the text inside from the sources so we can know what is it that our ancient wisdom has said about happiness. Aliyah, if you'd like to read here, A, be happy, and then follow along with Book of Psalms, chapter 100. This is entire chapter 100 is copied over here, but start with A.
Okay. Also, sorry I'm late.
No worries.
A, be happy. The Torah instructs us to be happy, to serve Hashem with joy. So according to the Torah, happiness is not a mood caused by something else, but a choice we must make. And then source this one, it's a mitzvah to be happy. A psalm of thanksgiving, make a joyful noise to the Lord, all the earth. Serve the Lord with joy, come before his presence with singing. Know that the Lord is God. It is he who made us, and we belong to him. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his court with praise. Be thankful to him and bless his name. For the Lord is good. His loving kindness is everlasting, and his faithfulness endures to all generations.
Thank you. So we have here this line, serve the Lord with joy. Serve the Lord with joy means it's telling us that you should serve the Lord with happiness. Now, of course, any commandment in the Torah, by definition, has to be a choice. If there was no choice, God can't command us. Either I have it or I don't have it. Now, sometimes the commandment is to try to do it your best. And if you cannot, you cannot. It's out of your control. But whatever we could control, we have to definitely try. So using the first commandment in the Torah as an example, the commandment, the first one is be fruitful and multiply, have children. If we can fulfill it, we are commanded to fulfill it. If one cannot, then they try. But we definitely have to make the effort of trying to fulfill it. So we have our commandment to serve God with joy means that it's something within our grasp to do, we have a choice about it. Let's look over here, this paragraph about not only it's a mitzvah to be happy, but the Torah actually tells us what will happen to a person that is not able to serve God happily, someone that is miserable. And the Torah goes on, it's a long chapter which discusses many curses that will come upon those that do not follow God's commandments. And in there we have a quote, which we'll quote over here for 3 verses. And Layla, if you'd like to read it.
And all these curses shall come upon you and shall pursue you and overtake you till you are destroyed, because you listened not to the voice of the Lord your God to keep his commandments and his statutes, which he commanded you. And they shall be upon you for a sign and for a wonder, and upon your seed forever, because you did not serve the Lord your God with happiness and with gladness of heart for the abundance of all things.
So we're trying to focus on this last few lines, because you did not serve the Lord your God with happiness and with gladness of heart. Meaning, he's not just saying because you didn't serve God, even if you serve God, but you didn't serve him with happiness and with gladness, you did it in a very miserable type of way, will also cause the person to eventually get all these curses to come upon them. So God is trying to encourage us and tell us, if you want to live a happy, blissful, peaceful life, make sure you are serving God with happiness. Getting back to our slides, comes the question, and Stern, if you'd like to read this question.
Is being unhappy a sin? How can one be punished for this?
Right, so what do you think? Is being unhappy, is it a sin?
Maybe it will like lead someone to sin.
Very
because
good.
They don't have motivation.
100%, you got it 100% right. There's no prohibition in the Torah, do not be sad, but it says, the commentaries, the Baal Shem Tov specifically, it said in his name, he said, sadness and being depressed is not a sin, but it can lead someone further down the line, meaning it can lead someone to the worst places more than any sin can. Because if someone is unhappy, they don't see a purpose and a need to do many things, and they'll look for things that even are destructive in order to give them a temporary happiness, a temporary satisfaction. So it can cause us great agony if a person is unhappy. And let's see over here the next source, which quotes that exact point. And Elia, if you'd like to read over here this paragraph.
Okay. So source 3, joy makes our service perfect. Okay. It is well known that the joy which accompanies the performance of a commandment by an individual Jew is a mitzvah in itself. Seeing that the performance of the commandment is called serving the Lord, we can understand that it is written on account of the fact that you did not perform the commandments of the Lord your God with joy, etc. When David writes, serve the Lord with joy, he does not refer to the serving of sacrificial animals, but to the performance of each and every commandment, which it is our duty to perform. Joy is the ingredient which makes service of the Lord something perfect.
Here he says that besides for doing the commandment, there's an additional aspect which makes the commandment perfect. What is that additional ingredient? It's the joy of doing the mitzvah. So this is not yet discussing how we're joyous or what should we do if we're not joyous. This is just trying to prove that to be joyous is a commandment, and it is something that we are supposed to strive towards, saying, not just do I want to do the commandments, but I want to do it happily, which is actually, as a side note, great for education. There are parents that educate their children in doing everything correct, but it's done in a very controlling way, not in a happy way. They'll perform the Passover Seder, but the stress level before the Seder is like up to the sky because they need everything to be exactly the way it's supposed to be. What you're teaching your children is the commandment, but you're missing the good ingredient in the commandment, which is joy. You have to be happy when you're doing the commandment, and that will teach them simultaneously 2 important lessons, doing the commandment and doing it happily. If you're only giving them one and not the other, you risk leaving them with nothing. Parents, not just in commandments, parents that want to educate their children, but do it in a very unpleasant, unjoyful, happy way, they risk the children not wanting to follow that path, because overall what children are looking for in life is to be happy. If they see their parents, even if their parents are successful, and even if they're very religious, but they see they're miserable inside, they see everything is a burden, children will look elsewhere. They don't want to come home. They don't want to hang around family. They don't want to be around those environments because they say it's just not a happy environment. They love being in places which are joyful, which people are happy to do things. It doesn't mean it's not difficult, but you could be happy to do difficult things. And you could be miserable and terrible, complaining and kvetching, even if you're doing fun things. It's about the attitude that a person brings towards what they're doing. And let's read source number 4. Stein, if you'd like to read over here, always happy on the bottom.
Always happy. It is a great mitzvah to always be happy.
There's songs about this, so maybe you heard the phrase in Hebrew, mitzvah gedola leyot besimcha tamid. It's a great mitzvah, not just a mitzvah, it's a great mitzvah to be constantly happy. Now, not to confuse, this is to clarify as well, happiness doesn't mean a person that is acting silly, foolish, and childish. That's not called happiness. That can actually lead to separate aspects of sin when a person's acting very immature and everything is a joke. Happiness doesn't mean that you're acting disrespectfully. Happiness means that you are feeling content in the place that you are and you're not looking to jump to somewhere else. Let's read a little bit further. Sheila, if you'd like to read over here, think about that.
Think about that. We tend to see happiness as an indicator and a result of outside conditions. If things are going well for us, we are happy. If things are rough, we are, or we have cause to be unhappy. But if happiness is simply a mood, a response to circumstances, how can there be a commandment to be happy? Clearly, the Torah believes that happiness is a choice, something that we can choose to be, and not just a choice, but according to the Torah, we have a moral obligation to be happy, always, whatever the circumstance. Refer back to the opening activity on page 182. All these traits and ambitions are not moods, but choices. In almost any circumstance, we can choose to be happy, sad, angry, or calm. How can I choose to be happy?
So we're going to get to that in a moment, but like you just read, and Layla, you did perfect even before we assumed in the class that people would say that a lot of them are not choices, but you're right. Anger, let's just jump back to that slide a second to show you what we had that Layla read into us in the beginning. Anger, sadness, braveness, all these things, as much as it could sound difficult, these are all choices. A person cannot choose what happens to them, but they can choose how they respond to it. If someone tips over your plate of food that you just made and you spent a whole hour preparing your delicious breakfast, and someone tips it over, you have a choice to scream, to complain, to blame them, to get into a bad mood, or you can say, Mazel Tov, this must be a blessing, which is what we try doing under the chuppah. When we break a glass, one of the lessons in it, there are many reasons for it, but one of them is teaching the couple how to start off a great life. Whenever someone breaks a glass in life, not only a physical glass, but someone breaks your heart, someone breaks your plans, someone breaks a promise, instead of screaming and saying, oh my gosh, who did that? Couldn't you see where you're walking? We could say, Mazel Tov, this is beautiful. Change the mood of what you're doing. I saw there's a lady, she's a motivational speaker, a religious lady. She has like a lot of followers. Maybe some of you, maybe Shtani has heard of her. She says she's a lot into being positive in every environment. Part of her job
What's her name?
Her name is Shimi Adar. I think people, she has like a Instagram thing, a following on Instagram. So I'm not following her on Instagram, but I saw her speak. You could check her out. She's a woman with, even though her name is Shimi, which is usually a male. So one of her jobs she has to test bus drivers that work for the city to see if they're taking any drugs. But she says, no one likes that job. It's a miserable job. You're coming and you're basically challenging all these people saying, I don't trust you. And she said she could come in and be the hated person on the block, because every time she comes in, people are like, oh, now she comes to us. Instead, she said she comes in, she reads out the name, she says, Roberto, guess what? You just won the lottery. You're up next. Let's go. We're going to get this done. She does it with a positive attitude. And she says they love seeing her because she brings so much good energy into the place. That's just an example of, it's not the task that you're doing, it's how the person approaches each aspect that happens in their life. So now comes to the big question. Yes, we just explained that happiness is a choice, but how do we choose to be happy? So we'll start with a question. Elia, read the question and tell me what you think your answer is.
Which person makes the best consumer? Oh, interesting question. In like the context of, I feel like I should know this answer. Like
No,
who?
It's not like a yes or it's not correct or incorrect. It's what's your assumption? If you are working as a marketing team trying to target an audience to buy products, who do you think do you have your best bet on trying to give them the advertisement because they're probably most likely to purchase?
The sad guy because he wants something else in his life or something like that.
Very good, very good. You're on target. You could definitely get a good marketing job. The guy that's the sad guy on the left, which I'm not sure myself, this girl on the right, if she's just deep thinking or if she's trying to work out her emotions, but definitely the guy on the left, he would be our prime target for buying something because he's not happy. When someone's not happy, they're looking for something to fill that void, right? If this guy is happy, this baby is having the time of his life, this woman, they're not looking for anything. Why would they buy something? They're enjoying their moment. They're looking for people that are not happy. Let's take these advertisements and Layla, what can you tell me is a common denominator between these advertisements and these, which I'll give you a moment to look at. I'll get back to the first one. So here you have, they're advertising 2 cars, and look at the titles that they're giving you. And going back to these, which again, look at the titles they're giving you and what they're trying to sell you. What would be the common denominator between all these advertisements?
I think that a common denominator would be that all of the advertisements are telling you there's something wrong with you, kind of. Like you are lacking something.
Yeah.
That we will get.
Do you want to finish more, or I wasn't sure if you were closing there, or? Okay, no, you got it 100% right. All these advertisements are telling you, you want to look as cool as this guy, you want to have white teeth like that, you want to have this young skin like that girl, or don't you want to be that cool guy driving that car that everybody like turns their heads to see? You are not good the way you are. You deserve better, and therefore open your wallets and give us your money. So of course they don't attack you so aggressively, but that's what they're trying to say. They're trying to creep into your mind that there's possessions out there that would make you look better, that would give you a happier life, and you don't have those possessions, and therefore you need them, and just acquire them, and that will solve your problem. You will be looking just as cool as these people. Notice how most advertisements for car have a young, beautiful couple or a young woman driving the car, as if buy this car and you'll be looking just like that woman. As one has nothing to do with the other, but they're just trying to portray to you that this person that looks so happy and beautiful is the way you're going to look if you would just buy this car. Now, the truth is that if material comforts and possessions were what made people happy, the average American would have been extremely happy. Think of it, the poor Americans today, the ones that are even the lower 20%, are living a more luxurious lifestyle than kings lived 250 years ago. You have electric, you have water, you have a washing machine, a dryer, even if you have to go to the laundromat, you have a refrigerator, you have toilets, you have a car, you flew on an airplane, even if you don't own one, and yet Americans are not happy. We're the people that take the most medications and drugs to deal with our stress, with our anxiety, with our unhappiness, because we're falling down, possibly, down this endless pit, which convinces us that we're going to be happy soon, but it's not making us happy. Let's look at a case study. We'll look over here. The first thing we'll have is an advertisement. Now look how much the advertisement is trying to picture something to you of how happy your life will be and how you'll be able to get whatever you want. And then after that, the video will continue to give you a example of someone that won what they're advertising, but yet didn't have the results that they're promising.
What's the first thing you would buy if you won $1 million?
A house and a bunch of video games. Yeah. A car or a house.
I would pay off my student loan.
Put money in savings for my little boy.
I'd pay off my mortgage. Travel around the world by boat.
I would buy
houses for my children.
a pension in Paris.
I would start my own traveling school for teens. Start a business or something.
I'd buy the Brooklyn Bridge.
I'd buy a farm. I will buy a million pairs of shoes with matching purses.
I would buy a house and a lot of makeup.
Mansion. I'm not gonna work anymore in my life.
It could be you. This winner is perfectly normal. I'd be rich. Whether you're 19 or 92, we all dream of unlimited credit. But are they $1 million happier? Jack Whitaker got lucky when he accumulated almost $315 million after winning the biggest Powerball. It was all smiles for Jack as he watched his dreams come true, or so he thought. 2 years later, a haggard, somber Whitaker claimed his lucky streak was essentially a curse. What went so wrong? On his journey from rags to riches, Whitaker shared his newly acquired wealth with his beloved teenage granddaughter, Brandy Bragg. Showered with luxuries, Brandy received 4 luxury sports cars from her grandfather. But soon, Whitaker was to pay a hefty price for his new lifestyle. Surrounded by the toys and trappings of wealth, Brandy started indulging in serious drugs. At one point, Brandy told Jack all she cared about was drugs. Brandy dropped out of high school and was later reported missing. Jack's wife made an emotional appeal for her missing granddaughter that was broadcasted on national television.
Please come home.
5 days later, their worst fears became true. Brandy's body was found, dead, wrapped in a plastic sheet, and dumped behind a parked van in a place called Scary Creek.
Money doesn't rule the world. Money is not what makes people happy. Family is what is dear.
Okay, so the point of this video is not to say that money is always a problem. It's to say that happiness doesn't come from money. Studies show that actually it's not everyone that has the money is happy, and it's not everyone that doesn't have money that's sad. It's not related one to another. If you have the right values, then money can enhance it. And if you have the wrong values, money can just ruin it even more. So it's not the money that's the solution or the problem. It's just the fuel that gets you further down the track you're going, which you get to choose which track you're heading down. So getting back to our student book, let's read over here. What is the Jewish approach? How should a person be happy? How many possessions does a person need to be happy? And Shani, if you'd like to read over here, B.
Happy with nothing. We chase possessions or labels, believing we'll be happy when we have them, but it's a fool's errand. As soon as we have the thing we wanted, we realize we're still not happy, and we keep chasing, not realizing that nothing makes us happy.
Okay, and now do we have a contestant, someone that wants to complete this sentence? I would be happy if, which is already putting someone in a dark situation because it's saying you're not happy. But if someone wants to volunteer and say, I would be happy if something, and this way we can discuss it. If no one wants to volunteer, that's fine. Okay, so we're gonna move forward.
Well, maybe if we weren't challenged with it, then we would.
Okay, so let's see. I saw Elia and Layla, you guys have something to share. I'm not putting it in a negative light. This is not either you have it or you don't. This is a lesson where we're trying to learn how to approach life. So please feel free to share.
So now I know that it's not, I wouldn't be happy if I had these things. But like, just like I could probably list a couple things that I would want that would probably make me like relieved or like it's something else, not happy. So maybe like getting into college, or like I did, but like getting into like a college that I want to go to, getting or a scholarship, like being able to get out of corona and like having a normal life. Those are just like a couple things that like would make me happy, but not really, you know.
Right. Which I understand. What you're saying is basically you'd be happy if those things happen, but it's not like if they don't happen, you're not happy. You're going to learn how to live life regardless, which is okay. It's great for a person to expect better, to want better. But what we're dealing with, of course, is if you don't get those items, what do you do then? If you don't get what you expected, which is okay to expect, does a person say, therefore, it's a failure, therefore I cannot be happy because Corona is around, or I cannot be happy because I didn't get into college, or my life is ruined because I don't have the new car that I needed, my car is still old? Or does a person say, yeah, I would love those things, but they will just enhance aspects of my life, but my happiness is not based upon those items. I learn how to be happy from within, not from without, which we'll get to in a moment in more detail. But Layla, let me hear what you wanted to share.
Thanks. I was just also going to say, get into a college I actually want to attend.
Right. Okay. That's good. So let's move on to some Jewish sources regarding this aspect. First, we'll read from the Medrash. And Layla, if you'd like to read the first one, I think this is a great line from the Medrash in Kohelet, on the book of Kohelet, Ecclesiastes.
It's never enough. No one dies with even half their desires in hand. If someone has 100, they want 200.
Right. So it says, the more you have, the more you want. Don't ever think that if you reach a certain place, you will then be satisfied, because our desire grows with our possessions. The more possessions we have, when we have 100, we want 200. What do we do when we get to 200? We say, now I want 400. When we get to 400, we say, now I want 800. Look at around. Anybody that was working for a certain goal, when they reach it, they just want more. Wealthy people got billions, they want more than billions. So it's not, again, it's not a bad thing. It's just nature of people that we're not happy with what we have. We always want greater. Now we have to channel that to the right path, but it's just, we're stating here a fact of the way human nature works. And let's, Elia, if you'd like to read the next one.
I don't know why I can't find, I'll just read it from here.
186. 186 in the book on the bottom, the last paragraph on 186.
Oh, got it. Okay. It is the lust for money which binds a man in the shackles of this world, harnessing thick ropes of labor and preoccupation upon his arms, as scripture says, one who loves money will never be satiated with money. The lust for money exposes him to many dangers and weakens his strength with many worries. Even after he has attained a great amount, as we learned, one who increases possessions increases worry.
Here you have two quotes. Number one, this is again from King Solomon, which you read, one who loves money will never be satiated with money. Meaning if you love money, you'll never be satisfied, because the more you have, the more you want. And he says here again, this is also from the book of Pirkei Avot, which Layla loves. I'm assuming Layla's read this before, that the more possessions you have, the more worry you have. If you have a credit card, you have to worry about paying the credit card. If you have a car, you have to worry about tires, brakes, oil changes, and alternate side parking if you live in New York. If you have a laptop, you have to worry about charging it and making sure it's ready. The more items you have, the more worry you bring upon yourself, which is a choice that we make. And we say, you know what, this item is very helpful. I want it, even though it brings some worry, but we have to be aware of it, that increasing items doesn't increase it doesn't increase stability or calmness. It increases worry and stress. If you have more items to worry about, there's more on your mind. It doesn't allow us to relax more. it gives us more things to keep our minds occupied with. Going back to our slides. Let's ask Sheila, thinking about the last time you were really happy, what did you experience happiness come of? As a result of what? One of these things or something else?
Thinking about my trip on a week from tomorrow. That makes me happy.
Yeah, okay. So and what's the happy part about it? Is it the weather in Hawaii? Is it seeing
all of the above? Seeing the Golitskis, all of the above makes me happy.
Okay. So for you, it's getting into a good place, a place where you have positive experiences is what makes you happy. So throughout our lives, there are things that make us happy. Most of the times, it's not, I bought something that made me permanently happy. Or
can I say something?
Yeah.
Okay. You know this because I bought a Torah and that made me very happy.
Right.
And hopefully it makes you happy too, because it's actually yours.
Right. Which we'll get to actually as an example of the opposite of something for oneself. They actually made a study in university. They gave out to a large amount of students $20. Half of them, they said, buy something for yourself. Half of them, they said, buy something for someone else that you care for. After the day was over, they didn't tell the students what they're going to do. After the day was over, they went back to those students and they said, those that bought something for themselves, they say, how much did that $20 actually enhance your day and make you feel better? And most of the students said, whatever, I just went and I bought myself a burger, or I went and I spent it on going into some bar and having a few drinks. It was all on small things. And they said, yeah, it was nice, but it wasn't something that they felt actually changed long-term. Those that spent it on someone else, they said, wow, I used it and I bought my girlfriend a bouquet of flowers, or I sent a gift to my roommate. I bought something for my mom and I sent her in the mail. Whatever it is that they spent it on, they actually said that it changed their attitude during the day and it made them happier because they knew that they built a connection with someone else. They were benefiting others, not just taking care of themselves, and it made them happier. So like Sheila is giving us an example, in reality, that aspect of not taking care of ourselves will make us happy. But one of the ways that a person can be happy is helping with others, feeling a purpose, feeling like we accomplished and we were able to bring a better existence to the world, to enhance the world's experience. And Stein, if you'd like to read over here this quote.
If our happiness is based on external conditions, once the conditions cease to exist, the happiness will disappear too.
Yeah, so happiness can never or should never be based on items I have. People that rely their happiness on their car, when their car gets into an accident, you destroy their life because I only live because of my car. Now, of course, we laugh at those people, but sometimes in our own lives, we have certain aspects that we think this is what I need to be happy. And that's never the solution for being happy, because nothing is guaranteed to be with you. If a person wants to truly be happy, we'll get to in a moment the saying in Hebrew, which is again from Pirkei Avot, it's not about what I need or what I have now that needs to stay with me, but it's saying I am someone that can adapt to any situation I find myself in. And you're always going to find yourself in a situation. So if you always know how to adapt and still be happy, you're always going to be happy, because you're never going to find yourself in a non-situation. You're always going to find yourself somewhere in some circumstance. So the solution is not the outside things, it's the inside. It's the perspective that we have. This is Rabbi Dr. Twersky, a very well-known author. He wrote many books on, a lot of them has to do with self-esteem, but he's a doctor in a psychiatric ward. He does a lot of research. He's a very famous rabbi. He worked a lot on self-esteem because that's something he realized he has to deal with, but he has works in a lot of other fields as well. So I believe he wrote over 50 books. Let's see just a little short clip of what he spoke about happiness.
Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, the principles on which the United States of America were founded. The pursuit of happiness is referred to as an inalienable right. In a culture focused on instant gratification instead of long-term satisfaction, the definition of true happiness is often blurred. Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky is a Hasidic rabbi and a psychiatrist specializing in substance abuse. This groundbreaking lecture, Attaining Happiness, was presented to an audience of over 900 in Chicago.
For the past 50 years, I have been working with people who have not come to see me because they're so happy. And sometimes I think they have a skewed perspective, having seen so many people who are miserable. But the question that bothers me is the concept of pursuit of happiness, which of course is in the Declaration of Independence as one of the inalienable rights. And I think that the pursuit of happiness has been something that has, since man first appeared on earth, that people have been pursuing happiness. But for thousands of years, we've been pursuing it and yet seem not to have found it. They tell a story about a young man who saw a youngster at the street corner on all fours, and he was obviously looking for something. And he said, son, did you lose something? He said, yeah, I lost $50. He says, oh, well, let me help you look for it. Where did you lose it? He said, down there. He says, well, why are you looking for it over here? He said, the light's better here. Sometimes it's easier to look where the light's better, but that's not where you're going to find it.
Okay, so his point is we're looking all over to find the happiness, and we try to find it where other people are hanging around, but not every time is that's where it is. It seems to be that the more we pursue happiness, the more it evades us. But what exactly do we need to make us happy? The answer comes from here, and the answer is absolutely nothing. You don't need anything to make you happy, and that's the only solution how to be happy. Layla, if you'd like to read for us this quote.
Yes. Who is a wealthy person? One who is happy with what he has.
You have to learn how to be exactly the way you are, with the amount of things you have, and happiness is not what you get, but happiness is what you become. It is not about acquiring more things, but it's about acquiring a perspective. What you become will make you happier than what you get or what you earn or what you take. Let's look at this story over here. This is a song based on happiness, but it's also based on a story, which they'll explain, which I think really puts in perspective of what it is that we need to be happy.
TorahCafe.com.
I traveled halfway across the world to see a sage. He lived like such a poor man in this day and age. I said, where's your leather couches? Where's your golden chandelier? Where's your walk-in closet for all the stuff you could wear? Well, all you got's that suitcase, my friend, ain't that true? I said, yeah, but you know that I'm just passing through. That's when he...
Oh, sorry, not sure what's going on with the internet here. Oh.
Torah.
Just passing through. And that's when he said, I'm just like you. I'm just passing through, just like you. My heart wants to feel something that's real, and my mind hopes to find treasures of another kind. And if you had my eye, you'd see a palace for you and me. Although we've been forever living in this town, people say he never really settled down. They say, where's your leather couches? Where's your golden chandelier? Where's your walk-in closet for all the stuff you could wear? The neighbors talk, but they don't understand the things he's collecting you can't hold in your hand. Like he said, I'm just like you, I'm just passing through, just like you. My heart wants to feel something that's real, and my mind hopes to find treasures of another kind. And if you had my eyes, you'd see a palace for you and me. For you and me. I'm just like you, I'm just passing through, just like you. My heart wants to feel something that's real, and my mind hopes to find treasures of another kind. And if you had my eyes, you'd see a palace for you and me. And my heart wants to feel something that's real, and my mind hopes to find treasures of another kind. And if you had my eyes, you'd see a palace for you and me. A palace for you and me. So just like you, it's a very powerful story that we're telling of a student who goes to visit a sage, and the sage has nothing in his house. And he says, where's your couches? Where's your chandelier? And he says back to the student, where's all your stuff? You just have a suitcase. And the student responds, but I'm just passing through. And that's when the sage says, aha, I'm just like you. I'm also just passing through. This world is temporary, where people spend most of their life collecting stuff. Essentially, that's what we do. So we have garages for our stuff. And the sage tells him, I'm actually just like you. I also collect stuff. It's just not that type of stuff, not leather couches and chandeliers. I collect treasures of another kind. So in the second verse, there's a line, the neighbors talk, but they don't understand. That's another message that he's giving over, not to be influenced or not to be worried what others will think. Societal pressures or societal norms. And, he stays focused on that higher goal, and he's trying to convey that. The whole song is trying to convey that. And it's something that we always have to keep in mind, because it's just so easy to get caught up in the day-to-day. It's just impossible to avoid it. So it's like a constant push that I think we have to try to find a way to connect to that. This song is actually from our brand new album, Inner Flame, and we're coming to the National Juke.
Okay. So the point of that story, I think, is self-explanatory. We're all traveling through this world. So just like when you travel, you don't bring your chandeliers and couches. we're not here in this world for the purpose of just acquiring a lot of items. We're trying to acquire in this world other types of blessings that we can have in our lives. Here's another powerful video. I think this brings out about the assumptions we have on society, being jealous and assuming who has the blessings and who's better, which really blinds us from looking at which treasures are we really trying to earn? What type of wealth are we trying to accumulate?
Nice shoes. Where'd you get them from?
Where'd you get them from? Fashion?
Why should it be like this? I don't know. It's not fair. Yeah, I know. There's nothing that we can do. I don't want to be like this. Me neither. I wish I was like him. I want to be like him. I want to be like him. I want to be like him.
Sorry to take so long, dear. Are you ready to go now?
So again, this is not to say that we have to find problems when everybody else's success and happiness. It's about teaching us that our happiness will never come from looking at others, but from looking at ourselves. Reading back in the text, what is it that will cause someone to be happy? Like we said, learning how to live with nothing, learning how to live based on the way God gave us, whatever he did give us. And getting into the additional point, it's having a purpose. And Layla, if you'd like to read here, C.
Purpose. When life feels like a jumble of disconnected parts, we feel aimless and disconnected. If we knew we were working to some kind of goal and every part of life was needed for that journey, it may give us a feeling of fulfillment. Perhaps purpose brings joy.
Person has a purpose. Think of it as, what would be your ideal job? Let's assume your ideal job is to be a makeup style. You were doing makeup. Now, let's say you were earning $25 an hour doing it. If I were to offer you $26, but I want you, instead of putting makeup on people, just put it the whole day on a mannequin. I'll put a fake image of a person and put makeup on and take it off the whole day and do it again and again. Would you be willing to do it for $1 more? Most people would say no. because it's not just about money. I'm looking to feel like I'm accomplishing something and helping people wear makeup. I don't want to do it for no reason, just to put it on a fake person. That doesn't give me a feeling of doing something, doesn't give me a feeling of purpose. If we look at our lives as most people do, that it's countless bits and pieces of fragmented activity. Like we do exercise, we do work, we do eating, conversations, entertainment, sleeping. These are all bits and pieces, nothing to do with another. Then after day, year after year of doing these things, we feel like our life is split into millions of fragments, and there's no connecting thread that brings a purpose, that brings a reason, a rhyme into everything as to what I'm doing here, which once in a while people start feeling like, is this what life is all about? Does anything really have meaning? Is there anywhere where I'm heading? Am I really happy? It's a bunch of small things that I'm doing to survive, but I don't see where I'm going. This can make someone feel very empty because they don't see a common thread throughout everything. What a person does have to start feeling is a meaning, a purpose as to what they're trying to do with their life. And just because we're running a little lower on time, I'm going to say this joke outside, where a camel has questions to his mother why they look so funny. Why do they have humps and eyelashes and large feet? And the mother says, because we have to trek through the desert. So the camel says, well, then what are we doing in the zoo? If we have all these talents because we're supposed to be doing something like walking through the desert, why are we in the zoo? So too in life, we have gifts and talents that God gave us. We have to learn how to use them instead of wasting them on trying to get things that we shouldn't be doing. And Steini, if you'd like to read here this paragraph, the main idea.
The main idea is that one should not do the mitzvahs as one who is forced, obligated, or coerced into doing them. Rather, he is indeed obligated to do them and he is happy in doing them, and he does good because it is good and chooses truth because it is true. And all efforts that he exerts will be minor in his eyes because he realizes that this is why he was created, to serve God. And when one does what he was created to do, he will be happy and joyous. For other types of happiness are dependent on temporary matters and that are not forever, but the joy of a mitzvah and the study of Torah and wisdom is true happiness.
Yeah, very good. So going on to the next point, when our life has meaning, we no longer feel empty. So we're constantly chasing after things we hope will fill the hole, but meaning fills our soul and leaves us with feeling of content and happiness. Because if you live a life full of purpose, then you have a reason why you're doing things. And instead of your life being fragmented, you know what you're accomplishing, you know where you're heading. Because the more progress you make, the better person you become, and the more you're feeling happier. But if a person is if they're procrastinating, or if they're not being able to accomplish their goal, stagnation is what leads to depression. Because progress and achievement are fulfilling for the person, but that's when we have a purpose. If we can make progress towards that purpose, then it's more significant for us, and we feel a greater sense of happiness. But if you are not being able to see a meaning in your life, if we're feeling meaningless, if we're feeling like we're not going anywhere, there's no purpose, it gives us an emptiness. And then all the billboards that are trying to attract us are trying to convince us that they can fill that void, but they cannot. Ultimately, there's a different hole that's inside of us that these things cannot fulfill. Let's look at this clip.
There's once a new shopping mall that opened up in Canada, but the traffic into the building was much less than hoped for. To attract more people, the owners decided to offer free food. And indeed, the free food drew a great crowd. And quickly, the number of visitors doubled. But surprisingly,
The sales actually dropped to even lower than what they were when they had less people. The owners realized that people buy less on a full stomach. So if you want to save money, be sure to eat before you go shopping, because both shopping and eating is about consuming. When people feel empty, they try to fill that emptiness with food or other things. But that rarely, if ever, satisfies the deeper source of their true hunger. In essence, we are souls, and souls don't crave things, and things will not satiate us. Souls only crave no things, and that's because the best things in life are not things. Love, peace, meaning are not things. They're very real, but they're not things. Our souls know that having everything isn't enough. Lasting happiness comes not from having more, but being more. Animals are easily made happy. Food and shelter generally does it, and as long as no one is hurting them, they're happy. But we are souls, godly beings, and we can't but crave all the no things that feeling godly engenders. I once met a fellow who was in an addiction recovery program, and he told me, in my program, they taught me, in every soul, there's a God-sized hole that only God can fill. You see, I thought drugs were my problem, and that once I'd finally get off the drugs, my life would be great. But in recovery, I discovered that that's not true. The drugs were not at all my problem. The drugs were my wrong solution to my problem. My real problem was that I didn't have God in my life. People try to fill their inner void with drugs, alcohol, compulsive shopping, and more things. But in every soul, there's a God-sized hole that only God can fill.
So now that we moved on from the purpose, it gets us to the next step, that besides for purpose, a person has to have what we just mentioned in the video. Bringing God into a person's life will lead the person to have happiness. And Elia, if you'd like to read D.
Let go and let God. Fear can take away our contentment and threaten our happiness. Complete trust in God and his master plan allows us to calm our fears.
So being able to rely on that, to connect with the way God has his plan, actually can make a person happier. If I were to all of a sudden surprise you from the back and say, boo, most people would get scared. But if I did it a second time, a second later, you wouldn't get scared because you were expecting it. You saw that it's happening. If everything in life, we look at it as a boo, someone is surprising us, we will get upset and not happy at a lot of things that happen. But if we know that ultimately we discover that there's a God that's controlling everything, and I'm not controlled by anybody else other than God's plan, it would allow us to calm down and say, I know I'm in good hands, and I know that things will be okay in the end. It's not what I expected, but I was expecting a roller coaster. I knew that it's going to be different than just a joyride. Let's read, Sheila, if you'd like to read over here this page, once we discover.
Once we discover our purpose and live by it, we are living with and for God. God is not just a concept, but a real presence by which we make decisions and orient our lives. When we trust in God, we know that not just everything that is done by us has meaning, but everything that happens to us has meaning as well. When we live with God as a presence in our lives, we are aware that there is a boss. Everything that happens to us in any circumstances in our life are meant to be. This can help us cope with stress and anxiety and bring us comfort. We are never the subject of an arbitrary universe blowing in the wind. Everything is intended, and whether we understand it or not, we know that the infinite God, who is so full of compassion and wants only what is good for us, is in full control. This allows us to be content, peaceful, and happy.
Yes. Okay, so this is the aspect of bringing God to assist in the happiness within our lives. Part of this concept of believing in God is letting go of the negativity in our lives, even if it's someone else's fault. They made a study with I believe it was chimpanzees or just the regular monkeys, that they way to catch them, they realized, was that when they catch on to something that they want, they don't know how to let go of it, even if it will cause them to get caught. So what they would do is they would put some type of food for them in a bucket where their hand can fit in, but they cannot pull out their hand if they're holding on to the item. So think of it as you stick your hand into a small bottle and you're trying to grab an avocado and pull your hand out with the avocado, it wouldn't be able to fit with the item. So these animals would stick their hand in, but they so wanted the item that even though they realize that now they're stuck, and either they have to let go of the item and pull out their hand, or they can just stay there stuck and thinking that they're going to figure out how to get it out, that caused them to stay in their location, and then those that were capturing the animal would be able to come and get them, and they would see the people coming and not run away because they want the item. They're ruining their own lives by trying to stick with the items that they have in their hand, not willing to let go and say, let me be free. In our lives, when we're holding on to anger or holding on to problems in someone else's life, regardless if they're at fault or not, or if we blame them, or if it's our parents or our siblings or a neighbor or a friend, the ones that are hurting most are ourselves from it. It's not allowing us to be free because we're sticking on and we're convincing ourselves the only way I'll be able to live my life is with this item, but it just doesn't come out. So instead, we get ourselves stuck in that location and allow all the negativity to attract and control us just because we're convincing ourselves that we need to have this item. We need to have this control. We need to be able to not be able to forgive this person to be happy. Reading over here a verse again from Ecclesiastes, King Solomon writes this, the wisest of all men. Layla, if you'd like to read the verse, chapter 11, verse 12.
Anger and evil. Remove anger from your heart. You will dissipate evil from your flesh.
Taking away anger will actually bring goodness upon yourself. You'll remove the bad. You're not forgiving the person because they deserve to be forgiven. You're forgiving them because you want to live a happier life. And read this quote. Layla, if you'd like to read this, clinging.
Clinging to bitterness and hatred harms you more than the subject of your hatred.
Right? It's like, imagine someone that gets stabbed, and in order to punish the stabber, they take the knife and dig it deeper into themselves. The stabber is not being punished by you destroying yourself more. You're just hurting yourself. Or it's like taking poison so your enemy will die. No amount of poison that you take will kill your enemy. It's just giving you a bad virus or a bad system, and you might end up dying yourself because of all that poison. Don't think that you're teaching anybody a lesson by bringing negativity upon yourself. Allowing to let go of that person's problems, not harboring it inside of your mind, frees you and allows you to live a happier and better life. And we'll move on to the next point and how a person should be able to live a happier life. So far, just to recap what we had in A, B, C, and D, we said, number one, happiness is a choice, and therefore God commands us to do it. Number two, we said you have to learn how to be happy with nothing. Don't think that any items are going to make you happy. We said, number three, to have a purpose in life, where you're going, which we spoke about purpose in last week. That purpose is doing what God expects from you to do. It's the greatest purpose we can have. That brings happiness. Connecting with God, point number four, which means understanding that ultimately God's in control. So nothing that happens to you, even if someone else did it, should not make you upset or depressed or annoyed or angry, which are emotions that come to us naturally, but we can overcome it by saying, I will not destroy my life because of what they chose. I believe in God, and I know this was supposed to happen to me from God, and I will make the best of the situation of what it can teach me, how it can help me, but I will not allow that person's stabbing to take the knife myself and continue destroying my own life willingly. So that was point number four. Now, point number five is getting to where Sheila was speaking earlier about giving, making people happy. And Stani, if you'd like to read E.
Give and get. When we're sad, we tend to focus on what we're missing, what we need. Ironically, It is when we focus on the needs of others, we find our spirits lifted and end up feeling better ourselves.
Okay, and the next paragraph.
Long before John F. Kennedy declared, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country," Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder of the Chabad Hasidim, said that something similar to a self-absorbed disciple seeking blessing. Until now, you have focused on what you need from God. It is about time you ask, what is needed of me?
All right, so ask not what can God give me, ask what can I give to God? What am I needed for? What is the reason that God put me here? That will actually bring more happiness to us because it's again aligned with what we mentioned earlier about having a purpose. Giving to others is part of the reason why we're here. Think of it as a candle in activity 2. When you light a candle, the one that you lit is not in competition with you, and it doesn't diminish your light. On the contrary, it makes it more bright, and now you're fulfilling more of a mission. If your goal was to light up this room, the more candles you light, nothing gets taken away from you, and on the contrary, it makes you more successful. By helping others, it brings happiness and joy to ourselves. And we'll look again, let's see this in the Jewish sources regarding how a person should celebrate holidays and Purim. Purim is a great holiday. We're supposed to be happy. And during all the biblical holidays, Sukkot, Passover, and Shavuot, we're supposed to be happy. And Maimonides in Jewish law describes how is it that one's happy. So for example, on Purim, there's a commandment to give charity, and there's a commandment to give gifts of food to friends and have a meal. Where should one put most of their focus? What's going to make them happiest? Having a larger meal or giving more gifts to friends, gifts of food, or is it giving more gifts to the poor? So let's read this source. Elia, if you'd like to read, it is better.
It is better for people to increase in their gifts to the poor more than they increase in their meal and the gifts that they send to their friends. For there is no greater or more glorious joy than to bring happiness in the hearts of the poor and orphans and widows and strangers. For he who brings happiness to the hearts of these unfortunate people is compared to the divine presence, as it says, to revive the spirits of the humble and to revive the hearts of the downtrodden.
Very good, thank you. So that's number one. He says, where is the true joy of helping them? And Sheila, if you'd like to read the next paragraph, this is regarding festivity meals during the holidays.
When a person eats and drinks in celebration of a holiday, he is obligated to feed converts, orphans, widows, and others who are destitute, lonely, and poor. In contrast, a man who locks the gates of his courtyard and eats and drinks with his children and his wife without feeding the poor and the embittered is not rejoicing with a mitzvah, but rather rejoicing with his stomach. And with regard to such a person, the verse Hosea 9:4 states, their sacrifices will be like the bread of mourners. All that partake thereof shall become impure, for they kept their breads for themselves alone. Wow.
Yes. So reading this paragraph on the bottom, if we're constantly evaluating whether or not we're happy, chances are you won't be happy. The more self-absorbed we are in trying to work on how do I become happy and what else do I need, working just within ourselves, the more we'll find ourselves to be lacking. But on the contrary, it is far better for a person to busy themselves with helping others or helping God, which is ultimately their goal of being created. And that will allow the person to free themselves of their mind convincing them what they need and actually feeling fulfilled. Just to clarify, which they bring over here this note, we're not talking about a person being codependent, where they're lacking and taking away, neglecting from their own needs in order to appease others to make themselves feel good. That is an unhealthy condition, which a person is taking away from their necessities, and sometimes they're lacking from their own family relationship or with their spouse or children because they need to feel the gratification of helping everybody else. That is something that a person has to realize might not be coming from a healthy place. But we're talking about when you have what you need and you're able to focus on helping others or fulfilling your mission, what God wants us to do, that is actually making the person happier. In addition to having gratitude, which is the more we help others, the more we're able to see, wow, look how much I actually have. Not looking down at the people, but looking greater at our situation and saying, wow, I could have been sick like that person in the hospital. Thank God that I can help and visit him and he doesn't have to come visit me. Thanking God for what we do have will make us happier, realizing the blessings that we have. There was a guy that comes to a rabbi and he says, Rabbi, my life is miserable. It's terrible. It's so bad. It's completely, you got to restart everything and destroy it all. And that will make me happy. I cannot be happy this way. So the rabbi says, okay, I want to start with making a list of all the things that are bad and all the things that we can work on for the future. So he says, first thing, tell me, when did your wife die? He says, Rabbi, what makes you think my wife is dead? He said, okay. You said your life is miserable. I thought your wife died. He says, okay. Okay, so your wife's alive. He says, I'm assuming you don't have any children, and you probably tried for many years, and no. He said, no, actually, Rabbi, I have some children. He said, okay, how many of your children died? And then the rabbi says, so which homeless shelter do you live in? And he goes through the list of showing how the guy assumed that his life is miserable and terrible, but it's because he expected things to be amazing, better by looking at other people, instead of him look at those that have less than you and say, wow, thank you, God, for giving me so much. However bad your situation is, there are people that are worse off. And the irony is that those that are actually in bad situations tend to be happier than those that are in amazing situations. Those that are in bad situations look at it and they say, wow, I could have been so much worse. I'm in the hospital now after an accident, but thank God I survived the accident. I'm even alive. And they're happier than those that are not even experiencing it and are running around. They never got into an accident, but they don't realize the blessings that they have. Sometimes we need like a wake-up call to realize how much our life is actually good and how bad it could have been. Let's read another source over here from the Kuzari. This is again from one of the philosophical works, from the famous ones. We'll read the header as well. And Layla, if you'd like to read.
Realizing we are grateful allows us to feel joy. Preparing for a pleasure, experiencing it, and looking forward to it double the feeling of enjoyment. This is the advantage of the blessings for him who is used to say them with attention and devotion. They produce in his soul a kind of pleasure and gratitude towards the giver. He was prepared to give them up. Now his pleasure is all the greater, and he says, he has kept us alive and preserved us. He was prepared for death. Now he feels gratitude for life and regards it as gain. Even if sickness and death overtake him, they will be bearable because you have thought about life and see the gifts of God. Okay. Whoever is unable to pursue such a course, consider not his pleasure a human pleasure, but a brutish one, which he does not perceive any more than the drunkard. The godly person fully grasps the meaning of each blessing and knows its perfect purpose in every connection.
Okay, so it gets a little hard to read when they're giving an accurate translation, because of course he lived many years ago, so the writing was a little different. But to understand in simple words, Sean, if you'd like to read, how does this work? So we'll understand his point of what he's trying to say of appreciating the blessings.
How does this work? It's quite simple. The more arrogant we are, the more entitled we feel. Nothing that we get is ever enough. We deserve more. Humility makes us feel less entitled. The less we think we deserve, the more grateful we are for anything we do get. This is why we are constantly feeling grateful. It also helps us appreciate and savor every good aspect and moment in our life. We take nothing for granted. And of course, we are not busy comparing ourselves to others.
Very good. So that's point number 4. And we're going to finish off at the last point, which is, I think, extremely important. And that is fake it till you make it. With happiness, it works the same way. If a person smiles, it actually helps the person become that way. There was a woman which I know her grandson related the story, that she told the Chabad Rebbe, she went through a hard life in Russia, and she said she's very depressed. She's not happy. So the Chabad Rebbe told her, every night when there's a wedding in the community, a Jewish wedding, which is a mitzvah to dance at the wedding, I don't care if you know them or don't know them, show up at the wedding and dance. Just dance with the people doing this special mitzvah of getting married. And she started doing it every wedding. She was showing up, Mrs. Lipsker, she would show up and dance. She didn't care if she knew them or not. And before long, she became known in town as the happy lady that just shows up to everybody's weddings. And she brought that happiness upon herself by hanging out in the right places, by doing happy things, by smiling. They train people that are dealing with phone calls, customer service. They say, even if they don't see you and you're just talking over the phone, smile while you're talking, and the person will feel happy you're talking to you. They'll feel like they got good customer service. So Elia, if you'd like to read this page, these two paragraphs.
Smile. Smiling, dancing, and doing happy actions can help us raise our levels of happiness. Do happy things, you'll become happy. By acting happy, we ultimately become happier. Science has shown that the mere act of smiling can lift your mood, lower stress, boost your immune system, and possibly even prolong your life. Dancing connects us to our emotional centers and makes our brain release an uncomplicated happiness and sometimes tears.
Okay, and we're going to see this again, from a Jewish source, this concept of fake it till you make it. This was written many hundreds of years ago. Sheila, if you'd like to read, this is page 202.
Okay. You must know that a person is acted upon according to his actions, and his heart and all his thoughts always follow after the actions that he does, whether good or bad. And even he who in his heart is a complete sinner, and all the desires of his heart are only for evil. If his spirit shall be enlightened, and he will put his efforts and actions to pursuit in Torah and commandments, even if not for the sake of heaven, he shall immediately incline towards the good. And from that which is not for its own sake comes that which is for its own sake, as opposed to being for personal gain. For the hearts are drawn after the actions. And even if a man is perfectly righteous and his heart is straight and innocent, desiring of Torah and the commandments, if he shall constantly deal with improper things, you could compare it to someone who was forced by a king to work a wicked occupation. If he constantly works in the wicked occupation, eventually from his righteousness he shall have more complete. He shall have become completely evil, for it is known that every man is acted upon according to his actions, as we have, I can't see the rest, as we have said. Oh, the last line, okay. According to his actions, as we have said.
Right, so the person's actions will define who he becomes. Do acts of goodness, you will become a good person. It doesn't make a difference what you're thinking. Work on the thoughts later. Do acts of evil, you will become an evil person sooner or later. Even if you don't have bad intentions, if you start acting in a bad way, that's eventually who you will start becoming. So if a person uses this as food for thought in the future, if you ever find yourself in a bad mood, most people, what are they going to do? They'll pull out their phone, they'll pull out a movie, the internet, they'll read something, they'll want to watch something in order to, they justify, I'm in a bad mood and therefore this is what I deserve to get me out of this bad mood. Doesn't get them out of the bad mood. It just doesn't teach them how to get out. It just sort of time passes and we move on from it. If we were to say, I'm in a bad mood, I actually want to use this for a great opportunity. I'm going to call up someone that wants to talk, but I never get around to it. Now I have some time. I want to be forcing myself to be happy. Let me call up my grandmother. Let me go visit someone in the hospital. Let me prepare a meal for someone that I know has a hard time feeding himself. Do something where you're forcing yourself to be in a positive situation, and you will see how your mood changes because you are doing the positive act. We'll see here another source, and Leila, if you'd like to read the paragraph above the box.
The above teaches us a very important principle, that actually our behaviors influence our thinking and feeling. We become what we do. Therefore, the bottom line is act happy, even if it's not real. Even if at first it feels like an act. The more you act happy, the more you might find that it has an impact on your frame of mind and you no longer are feeling unhappy, but your act has become you.
Very good. And Stern, if you'd like to read the next box.
Such is the case, for example, of he who eats fat beef and drinks spiced wine in order to broaden his mind for the service of God and his Tyra, as Rava said, wine and fragrance make a man's mind more receptive, or in order to fulfill the command concerning enjoyment of Shabbos and festivals. So too, when a person says something amusing in order to sharpen his wit and rejoice his heart in God, in his Torah and service, which should be practiced joyfully, as Rava used to do with his pupils, beginning his class with some witty remark to enliven the students thereby.
So he would use, what he's saying in this paragraph is, you can use possessions, use items like meat or a joke to enhance and start a happy life. But like we said in the beginning of the class, that's not the ultimate. Every time you're sad to eat meat is not going to make you happy. Every time you're sad to watch a comedian, it's actually, some of the comedians were the most depressed people that lived, because comedy and meat are ways to start the person, getting him going, but ultimately it has to lead him to do something that he knows is purposeful, something that connects him to others, connects him to God, which brings the true joy into us. So these are tools that can be used to get the person moving. And like we said, getting into the good college, getting all these blessings that we have, they're not bad on their own. We shouldn't despise anything to desire. We should say, these are great things for me to realize the blessings I have in my life. These are things that can be used to jumpstart me to get onto the happiness. But ultimately, they themselves are not the make it or break it. If I have them, I'll use it to then move on to realize the true purpose and meaning of my life, to understand that I'm accomplishing my goal of what God wants me to do. But if I don't have it, then clearly it wasn't needed, and I have to learn how to get that happiness with something else. But to eventually, don't just use the temporary as the permanent solution. It's just there to assist, to get on to the lecture. Like he would use a joke to start off the lecture, but he didn't sit there for an hour and a half making jokes. It was one joke in order to get them involved with the study that they were doing. So we'll move away to our final points that we take away from this class. Maybe another time we'll have some of those videos. This is a basic video. You've probably seen these ideas before. So it's not about seeing what I need to be happy. It's saying what it is that I have is exactly what God needs me to have. And I will learn how to adapt. If I used to have a car, then clearly I needed a car as part of my mission. If I don't have my car anymore, I have to say, okay, then clearly God's saying I can be happy without a car. And I have a new mission that doesn't require a car. And that's the way I'll be happy. If I waste my time with a car, then I'll be pursuing something that wasn't my task. So let's go through the key points. We'll start with Layla. You could read the first point, and just to give you a short elaboration of what this class has changed or taught you in that field, or what it's teaching you.
It is a mitzvah to be happy. So I learned that that it says to serve God with joy, and that doing every commandment is a choice and being happy is a choice. But if you're not happy, then you can lead to sin, even though not being happy isn't necessarily a sin.
Beautiful. Shani, point number 2.
The Torah considers happiness to be of paramount importance and also a moral obligation. If it is an obligation and a goal, it must be something of which is within our control and a matter of choice. So yeah, we have the power to choose happiness.
Very good. Okay. Elia.
While happiness certainly depends to some degree on external circumstances, such as health, security, and financial stability, true happiness does not come from stuff. So, like, we can choose to be happy no matter what we have. And, like, how the thing that I remember is, like, the story you told about that lady who was really sad, but she, like, came and danced at all these places and everyone knew her as, like, the happy lady, and then she became happy. So, like, even if we're, like, we don't have everything we want, or we're, like, disadvantaged, we can choose to be happy no matter what.
Right. Very good. And to clarify, it means happiness in a good sense. I'm not recommending for someone that's not happy to hang out in bad places where there's bad dancing or bad environments of drugs or alcohol. It's doing good things, because of course dancing at a Jewish wedding is a mitzvah, and it's realizing that it's not an outside thing, it's within myself to choose what type of life I want to live. Okay, Sheila, next point.
Happiness comes from having purpose and living with purpose. Oh, yeah. Well, if you have a purpose, like if I want to make a kabod better and donate something to there, that makes me happy. That's my purpose. If I know that there's a kabod that needs something, I donate it.
No, that's true. So that's what we were saying here. If a person feels like they have a purpose of what there's meaning to their life and makes them feel happy, stagnation is what causes depression. People, ask anyone that's depressed, say, do you feel accomplishing and meaningful in your life? And almost always the answer is no. I'm feeling meaningless, and therefore I'm feeling depressed. I'm feeling like there's nothing I'm doing, no reason I'm here for, there's nothing I'm accomplishing, and therefore I'm feeling that emptiness. It goes hand in hand versus someone that feels happy and they feel like I'm important, there's a purpose, there's a mission, I'm doing something, I'm accomplishing. That makes them feel like a drive. They're moving, they're forward, and therefore they're happy. Okay, Layla, next point.
It's having God in our lives, that one. Okay. Having God in our lives increases happiness. So yeah, kind of what I was saying before, that when we feel like there's something bigger and that God has a plan for us, we kind of accept when not everything goes our way.
Right. Yeah, which, to be honest, when there's no God in the world, there's absolutely no purpose in the world. If there's no purpose, there's no happiness. If you feel like I'm doing nothing, then why should I be happy? There is no reason for all my stress and all my work and all my hard labor. If there is no God, then it's all meaningless. There's no reason for anything. And it's very depressing if a person has to work and have so much problems in life when there is no reason for it. Knowing that there is a purpose for everything makes it easier for someone to say, okay, I just have to reshift my first assumptions, stop with my expectations, and then I'll be able to be happy, knowing that God is ultimately the one that's going to give me the right path. Shani, the next one.
Happiness is increased by giving and sharing. So like we said, like ask not, like, oh, the student said to sorry, the what was it, like the Alter Rebbe said to the student, You have to, happiness is going to come from what you're going to do for like fulfilling your purpose.
Right. The student said a bunch of lists of what he needs. So the rabbi told him, till now, you've only spoken about what you need. You haven't mentioned what you are needed for. So by giving and doing what we're supposed to be doing, that brings us happiness, because that connected again with purpose and doing what God wants, connecting with God. Okay, Elia, the next point.
Humility and gratitude increases happiness. This is like my grandfather's like favorite thing to say. He says it all the time, and I don't know, it's like important, because if we're grateful for what we have, then like we'll feel better about life and we'll be happier. So whatever, like what I said before, like, or like that video you showed with the I want that car and then I want that bike, whatever. You don't know, like everyone wants more, but then like somebody could want what we have. So we have to be grateful for what we have, because we definitely have more than somebody else and a lot of other people. So
and more than just, again, just to clarify, it's not to say that some people like putting down those that have more than them, say, oh, really, they must have, like, if they have money, they must have a terrible marriage. If they have a good marriage, they must have bad health. It's not about finding the problems in someone else to make ourselves feel good. It's about understanding that my happiness is not dependent on having what they have. They have exactly what they need, and I have to be extremely grateful for what I have. Let me look at those that have less than me, not try to find problems in those that have more, but look at those that have less, say, wow, I could have been like those people, and thank God I don't. So having the humility to realize that I don't need to be the big shot and have the most money and have the most of whatever it is I'm desiring, and thanking God for what I do have, because you'll always have what you have. So if you know how to be grateful for what you have, you'll always be happy, because you never don't have what you have. Okay, next point, Sheila.
Forgiveness and letting go of anger. I can't see the other word.
Oh, maybe.
It's more of letting go of anger and something happiness. But what's after anger?
Increase happiness.
Oh, increase. Okay, I can't see that. Well,
Yeah,
truthfully, no, the pictures are there. Well, truthfully, I don't buy that. I mean, that's not me. If I'm angry, I could stay angry, and it doesn't bother me, and it'll make me, and I cannot forgive somebody if they did something forever, but I don't think about it. It doesn't dwell, and I don't think about it. That's it. If they do something, they're out.
Right, which
I'm not saying it's for everybody, but me, I cannot do that.
No, which I think, number one, you mentioned something that you didn't realize you're agreeing with this, in the sense of, you said you just move on from them, you forget about them. It doesn't say.
But I'll never forgive it. I mean, I'm not that good.
So that's a separate discussion. But as long as someone dwell on the negativity, they'll be able to be happy. If their entire life now is spent on taking revenge or paying this person back or bad mouthing them or letting everybody know all the gossip about this specific person, will not allow the person to free themselves of the negativity that happened. If they can learn how to move on, forget about it, and say, I don't want to. Right. To move on.
Don't even think about it. Yeah. Just gone.
Okay. Layla, if you'd like to do the next one.
Acting happy actually makes us happier. So true. I completely agree. Fake it till you make it. Smile. Yeah, I mean, smiling, like, science has proven that it totally works. And I do it sometimes if I'm feeling upset. So I agree.
Which I think a good example is relationships. If you have a bad relationship with your spouse or with your mother, if you wait for it to become better and then you'll fix it, then you'll start acting appropriately. It might never happen, or it'll take a long time. Just start doing the right things to them, start being nice to them, and all of a sudden you'll feel like, wow, I can't believe I thought this relationship was bad. It's actually pretty good. So do something nice for them. Say something kind as if there was nothing bad that happened, and you'll start seeing their response to be the same. And all of a sudden you realize that it actually wasn't a whole big story. This was something that we can move on past and start living again in a good relationship. So acting like the relationship is good will make the relationship better. Acting happy will make us happier. Okay, next point, Shtarni.
A happy person is more inclined to do good actions and less inclined to do the opposite. Conversely, a person who engages in morally correct actions will be a happier person. So happiness leads to goodness, but also goodness leads to happiness.
Very good. I think this is extremely important, that just as one leads to the other, by actually doing the right things will make us happy, and being happy will make us do the right things. They're connected one with the other. Okay, with that, we'll conclude. All the best. I know we went a little
Thank
over.
you.
Next time
Thank you,
we'll try
Rabbi.
to shorten it. Yes, my pleasure. All the best, and wishing you all a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.